Monika Maeckle is a butterfly evangelist and pollinator advocate who explores and documents how our lives intersect with all wildlife. She's the founder of the Texas Butterfly Ranch and the Monarch Butterfly and Pollinator Festival in San Antonio. Today, she joins us for a look at her thoughtful, insightful book, The Monarch Butterfly Migration, Its Rise and Fall. Welcome, Monika.
Thank you for having me.
What is the Butterfly Ranch?
I like to say that the Texas Butterfly Ranch is a state of mind because like so many great things in life, it's something I didn't plan to do and it just kind of happened to me. I was actually working here in Austin a lot as vice president of new media for a company, and I was suddenly assigned to reach out to all our clients about social media, and I had to learn about Twitter and Facebook and what's a blog. This was back in the early 2000s, and teaching our clients how to use these tools. And at the same time, I had just been introduced to Monarch Butterfly Migration and tagging monarch butterflies, and I just became captivated by these insects. And one of the ways that I process what I learn is to write about it. So since I was having to do this at my company, Business Wire, I thought, I'm just going to start a blog on butterflies. And so I started the Texas Butterfly Ranch on WordPress, and just starting. I mean, when I go back and look, that very first blog post is still up there. I think it's like 50 words, and I was like, I got 3 views. So it just started out, and then I would see these things in nature, and I would write about them. It would help me understand and process, and then the lessons that I learned blogging about butterflies, I could apply to my job, and vice versa. And I got more and more subscribers, and thousands of email list subscribers, and I'd literally get people emailing me like, hey, I'm going to be visiting San Antonio coming up. What's your address? I don't see a location here. I was like, well, that's because it's kind of like only online. And so I kind of came up with this idea that it's basically a lens through which to look at all these complex issues like sustainability, climate change, migration, and immigration. And I like to say it encompasses the Hill Country, San Antonio, and Austin, but basically it's just a way to look at the world. So
it's not necessarily from a biology background, it's really more from an analytical.
It's a nature nerd curiosity background. I mean, I've always been a gardener and love being outside. And in 2000, my family was able to acquire a small piece of property on the Lana River, and that I always like to say, I call it the Texas Butterfly Ranch. Everybody in our family has a different name for this place, but I call it the Texas Butterfly Ranch.
That'll work.
And I like to say that the Texas Butterfly Ranch is where I got my master's degree because I've learned so much from that land. I mean,
wow.
Just amazing amount of stuff and captivating, interesting, just shocking amount of stuff that you can only learn by experiencing and being out in nature.
Science is observation, right? So,
absolutely.
So why did you write this book, and why did you call it The Rise and the Fall?
I've interviewed all the major monarch butterfly scientists. I've been fortunate as the organizer of our Monarch Butterfly and Pollinator Festival in San Antonio, and having been very involved in the Mayor's Monarch Pledge designation of San Antonio as Monarch Champion City in 2015 to really get to know some scientists, use them as sources, have invited them as guests at our festival. And there's just a lot of competing narratives about monarch butterflies. Is tropical milkweed's okay? Not it's okay. The migration's the problem. No. The lack of milkweed's the problem. No. Habitat loss is the problem. No. The roosting sites are the problem. And it's like, well, what's the truth? What's the right thing to do here? And I think everybody that's not a scientist or even probably scientists struggle with the right thing to do and where the truth lies. And I honestly, more than ever, and I think our political climate demonstrates this, is that the truth depends on where you sit, and the objective reality that you witness depends on where you come from.
I know with a lot of things like with the bees, with colony collapse, it seems like everybody wants a singular answer, right? This is the reason for perhaps this decline of the species, but it's really complex.
It's very complex. In the case of the monarch butterfly, it's a perfect storm of negative circumstances, climate change, habitat loss, insect repellents, pesticides. But I think climate change is becoming the premier threat. I mean, you see what happened this year. We're having a very weird year this year. Like, I was out at our ranch last weekend, and usually I see what we call the leading edge of the migration the first week in September, and I haven't seen any monarchs at all.
Right.
And I was out there last week, and I saw 3 monarch butterflies over 3 days, and I would normally see dozens. There were thousands and thousands of snout butterflies. I don't know if you've seen the snout, the snout break that we've been witnessing, but it was so impressive. Like literally, you couldn't open your mouth, and there were snout butterflies everywhere. And so, I mean, one of the things that I posit in the book, and I think I might have annoyed some scientists with this, is that I think that it's very like the monarch migration is going away. Any scientist you speak with, migration studies experts will tell you that migrations are ephemeral and they serve a moment in time. And you know, with everything that's going on with monarch butterflies, it's kind of getting clear that it really doesn't make sense to migrate when you have everything you need locally. You've got a host plant, you've got mates, you've got the ability to reproduce, you've got shelter in a hospitable climate. As climate change warms up and these ecozones move north, why would I, get out of Dodge and fly 2,800 miles in a very often fatal undertaking to reproduce? I know I've noticed more since I learned the word phenology of the timing of the seasons and how it's so incredibly important, these syncopations of the rhythms of the planet, where monarch butterflies fly north in March. They're expecting to find some milkweed along the way to lay the eggs. The females lay the eggs to start the first generation that will launch the whole cycle of that year's migration. And for example, we had a very hot February one year. All the milkweed sprouting, coming out of the ground, and then we had Storm Uri, and everything dies to the ground. So when those monarch butterflies come up and they're looking for milkweed, there's none there. And then, so they keep flying, they burn through their fats, and they die before they can reproduce, and that can really affect future generations. And I think this year in particular is very weird because we're seeing the ramifications of that Storm Uri. And that second year we had another big freeze. And those all fuel the future generations. And last year we had the second lowest roosting population, and since records have been kept. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens this year because, as you know, the monarch butterfly was submitted for endangered species listing status in 2014. They took 5 years to decide that, yes, it's warranted, but we're not going to do it because we don't have the resources, because there's 165 other species in front of it or something that are more demanding. And I agree with it. And I agree with that because the monarch butterfly is not endangered, but the migration is. But they also agreed that every 2 years they would reevaluate that. And 2024 is one of those years. So by the end of this year, they're going to reevaluate the monarch butterfly's listing status. And it'll be very interesting to see where they come down, given last year's low population.
Really quickly, I want to say you have a new book coming out. I mean, this one sounds absolutely amazing with all of the content, the controversy, but what is the new book?
Not surprisingly, the monarch situation led me to this book because I started to really dive deep into native plants and well-adapted plants. It's called Plants with Purpose, 25 Ecosystem Multitaskers, and it's a book about plants that do more than look beautiful.
Well, Monika, that is amazing. Thank you so much for coming to visit with us, sharing about the monarch butterfly migration, the rise and the fall, and your new book.